let's give a warm welcome to the Congressman from Texas, Beto O'Rourke.
Hey, nice to see you. Good to see you. Hey, good to see you. Right here. It's yours. There you go. Go for it.
Buenas tardes. Good to see everybody. DJ Carmen, thank you for the introduction, bringing us out for the music. Karine, Stephanie, looking forward to the conversation. And to the people of Move On, thank you for being such strong supporters of ours in Texas in 2018. You absolutely fundamentally changed the nature of democracy in our state. We had been 50th in voter turnout before 2018. And so many of you helped so many of us in Texas go to each one of the 254 counties on a bold, progressive agenda, showing up for everyone, writing nobody off, taking no one for granted. And that state and its 38 electoral college votes are now unlocked. We won more votes than any Democrat before us, won independents, 500,000 Republicans, and young voter turnout up 500% because we all did it together. So thank you. Appreciate it. Likewise. Here's my big idea. What if we said that we really wanted to ensure that every immigrant who's come to this country of immigrants and asylum seekers and refugees was truly treated with the dignity and respect that they deserved, and we did not try to mirror Republicans by saying, but first, we're going to get tough on them, break up those families, deport them, internal enforcement, walls, none of that stuff. What if we said, si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades, vamos a tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad? That we will never again put another child in another cage, deport her mother back to the very country from which she fled in the first place. Never allow another dreamer, more than 1 million strong, every bit as American as anyone else here in this theater tonight, live in fear of deportation back to a country that they do not know. Make them U.S. citizens here in their true home country. Cancel the president's chaos on the border. The executive actions, the Muslim travel ban, all of this bullshit that in no way, in any way, effectively represents the best traditions and values of the United States of America. What if the 9 million green card holders in this country who have legal permanent residency were able to become U.S. citizens because we canceled any fees for their citizenship application, mailed them fully filled out application forms, además, and then the 11 million, so many of whom are working the toughest, the hardest jobs in this country, that no one born in this country is willing to work. Maybe if they are lucky, working for a minimum wage, far too often working for something far below a minimum wage, if they earn a wage at all. Kept in modern day bondage, their immigration status used as leverage against them. If we did this, not only would we be living in concert with our values and our foundational principle that we are a nation not comprised of a people of a singular race or ethnicity or common ancestry, but that we are all created equal. We are a people of the planet who's found a home here to reveal their genius so that we could become the indispensable country. That which alone can do for ourselves in the world which no other can. You can measure this economically. And over the next 20 years, the conservative estimate is this adds $1.2 trillion to our economy. You can measure it through security. My hometown, El Paso, Texas, one of the safest cities in the United States of America, 20 years running, not despite, but because we are a city of immigrants. A quarter of those with whom I was born and whom I live came from another country, chose us. Their very presence makes us stronger, more successful, and safer. So listen, we can meet this opportunity because if immigration is a problem, it is the best problem we have ever had in this country's history. We can ensure that we treat those who come to our borders after fleeing the deadliest places on the planet with the respect that they deserve. And then we can help those in Honduras, in Guatemala, in El Salvador reduce violence, address historic droughts caused not by God, nor by Mother Nature, but by our own emissions and excesses and inaction in the face of the facts and the science. We will have a stronger, safer, more successful country for it. That's my big idea. Thank you all for having us out. Gracias. Thank you.
People have tried to pass immigration reform for 30 years, but has had enormous opposition. And there are levers in the legislative branch, and there are levers administratively and through the executive branch, as we've seen. So what are the things that can be done, and what is the priority that this should take in a post-Trump era in terms of prioritization and how quickly we should act, and what can be done to break this logjam of opposition?
It's rare that I meet a Republican, a Democrat, an independent, an American who thinks that it's okay to meet these children with cages or their parents with deportation. What would compel you to make a 2,000-mile journey on foot or atop a train known as the Beast or La Bestia, unless that was the only thing you could do to save the life of that child for whom you will sacrifice anything? And so I find some common cause with my fellow Americans when I say, instead of meeting them with a wall or this inhumanity or this cruelty or this torture, what if we obviated the need for them to make that journey in the first place? When we invest in violence reduction in the Central Triangle of Central America, in the Northern Triangle of Central America, when we help U.S. farmers connect with their counterparts in Honduras going through historic droughts right now, fewer families have to make that journey. It's incredibly important for us to take that foreign leadership right now, and there's consensus on that. These dreamers that we just spoke of, more than 1 million strong. California holds more than any other state. Texas is right behind you. I have yet to meet an American who wants to deport them back because they understand that everything that we've invested in them will be lost to us in this country if they reveal their genius someplace else. And then it's not just in border states like ours, but traveling in Iowa, I'm meeting farmers, I'm going to these small communities. Their vitality depends on their ability to attract immigrants, and those immigrants having a full seat at the table. That's why it's so important not just to focus on the undocumented, as important as they are, but those who have the opportunity to naturalize now, speed that process so that they're fully engaged, not just economically, but democratically. It's going to make this country so much stronger for it. So we're going to make that case everywhere to everyone and ensure that everyone's got a seat at the table. That crosses party and geographical lines.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Congressman. So my question to you, so clearly you are from El Paso, you represented that area. I went to El Paso about a year ago when the zero tolerance policy really became very nationwide of what was happening, and these families were being separated. And I went to the detention center, the Tornillo Detention Center. It was all very heartbreaking, as you can imagine. We didn't get to go inside, but we did a vigil, we protested out front. And so my question to you is, if you were able to speak to a family that was being detained right now, what would you say to them?
First of all, I want to say thank you for coming down to Tornillo. It's not the easiest place in the world to get to, and that's exactly why they detain those kids in those tent camps right there. But your willingness to hold vigil, to bear witness, to testify to your fellow Americans, that is what ultimately compelled the Trump administration to at least temporarily halt their family separation policy. I was able, as a member of Congress, to actually go in. So I could tell those kids in English, I could tell them in Spanish, I'm with you. I know that you are here. We're fighting for you. Imagine what it would feel like to be 10 years old, a stranger in a strange land, not to speak the language, not to know when or even if you're ever going to see your folks again, frightened out of their minds. And so for someone in a position of public trust and power to be with them and say, I am with you, and I am not going to stop until you are reunited with your family, and then to work with you and other members of MoveOn to make sure that we applied the pressure that ultimately closed down Tornillo. It no longer exists. That pressure, if we persist and keep it up, is going to make sure that We reunify those families that are still separated today. Let us not ever lose their memory or this urgency with which we must meet this challenge. And so we got to make sure that we fulfill the commitment that you and I made to those kids. We're not going to forget you. We know what is being done to you in our name, and we're going to make sure that we do this right. And so that's why I think that we can relieve the chaos this president has created on the border with far more humane, far more secure policies than what we are doing right now. Thanks.
Shifting gears, Congressman, as you know, we've solicited questions from MoveOn members across the country, and this can be on any topic. So your question comes from Keisha, a MoveOn member in Missouri, who asks, do you support H.R. 40 and the equivalent bill in the Senate to study reparations for Black Americans?
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Keisha, for the question. And if I could just very quickly, I think people like me, white men, are belatedly coming to the realization that when we're talking about justice in this country, it is not just criminal justice reform, although that is important. 2.3 million behind bars, disproportionately African American communities of color. Too many there for possession of marijuana, a substance that is legal in most states in the country. So not only ending the war on drugs and a war that has become a war on some communities, specifically of color, not only expunging the arrest records, but understanding that the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline begins in kindergarten, where a child of color is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled, that we have outcomes in our healthcare system, a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color in this country today. In our economy, 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in Black America. And this is not new, nor is it a product of Donald Trump. It is foundational to this country, how we built our wealth. So yes, H.R. 40, squarely confronting the legacy of slavery and segregation and Jim Crow and the continuing suppression that we see in America today, is fundamental to any repair of the damage that we have caused and ensuring that we do not continue to visit this same injustice on the generations to come. Thank you for asking.
So, Congressman, many people believe that there is sexism currently in this election with the Democratic, the Democratic race that we're in right now. First of all, do you agree? Secondly, what do you see your role in this? And thirdly, how do you use the power that you have, right, as a cisgendered male, to fix this?
Yeah. It's a great question. The answer to your first question is yes, absolutely. There's disparate treatment of these candidates. There are advantages that I have that I brought into this race that I did not earn, that were a function of circumstance and fortune and fate, being born a white man in this country. Recognizing that, listening to those who have not had the same life experiences as I have had, the same advantages that I have enjoyed, is fundamental to my ability to reflect this country, both in our campaign and in any administration that I would lead. One of the important factors in our ability, I think, to be successful is our campaign manager, Jen O'Malley Dillon, one of the most successful campaign managers in this country, who is fundamentally focused on ensuring that this campaign looks like this country, that we bring the genius, the talent, the diversity of experience to bear and ensure everyone has a seat at the table. Our cabinet will look much the same way to make sure that we're bringing everyone into the conversation, into the solutions to the challenges that we face. And we certainly have some based on how this country was founded and the disparate treatment that we still see. Yeah.
Great.
Definitely.
Last question here. We're in the Bay Area, the heart of the tech community, right? And many people believe that these companies have amassed too much power and are playing a role in our country and in our social dialogue today that is harmful. Do you agree? And what do you think could be done about this?
I agree with the premise of the question. Belatedly, I think many of us have realized that people have now become the products on these social media platforms. Our private experiences, our lives are being traded and sold very often without our awareness or our permission. You add to that a Congress that has been bought and paid for by political action committees. The only way to explain in 2017, your representatives, well, maybe present company excluded, but representatives in Congress voting to allow internet service providers to sell your private browsing data, and think of the funkiest, weirdest places you've been online, to the highest bidder without your permission or your consent, signed into law by our president, totally at odds with consumer protection, with their constituents. But if you follow the dollars, who paid for that access, that influence in those outcomes, you begin to understand what's at play. So this campaign that doesn't take a dime from a single political action committee or corporation or special interest or lobbyist will be squarely focused on people and their interests, holding these social media companies accountable for the way that they treat our private information and making sure that there are consequences and accountability and justice when they fail us. So I want to make sure that we do that in this next administration.
All right.
All right.
Thank you,
so
Congressman
much,
O'Rourke.
Thank you all very much. Gracias.
Let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you can tell Jen I said hi.
I will.
Yeah, good to see you. Good to see you.
Say goodbye, Congress.